These are the KEF LS50s, standing just under 12 inches high, 8 inches wide, and 11 inches deep. This little speaker managed to captivate the audio world for its forward-thinking design and approach, featuring what is known as a uni-Q driver array, which consists of a 1-inch vented aluminum dome tweeter and a 5 1/4 magnesium and aluminum woofer. Offered up in a concentric design, the original LS50 was known for its cohesive sound reproduction and clarity. Easily one of the most celebrated hi-fi speakers over the last decade, the LS50 seemed to be one of those little speakers that had no rivals for what it was capable of doing. That is, until now. These are the KEF LS50 Metas, standing just under 12 inches high, 8 inches wide, and 11 inches deep. These new Metas might appear to be the same speaker as their older brother, the original LS50s, again offering the uni-Q array with, once again, a 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter and, yes, a 5 1/4 aluminum and magnesium cone woofer. At a glance, it might seem as if KEF might be pulling a fast one on us, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Folks, we need to have a chat about something called metamaterial absorption technology. So what the heck is that, you ask, and does it make the Meta LS50 worth the price of admission? And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, that is exactly what we're going to find out. Breaking it down in the most simple definition from KEF's own website, metamaterial absorption technology is a highly complex maze-like structure that eliminates unwanted sound from the rear of the driver, and according to KEF, results in a purer, more natural performance. Now, I'm not about to tear apart this speaker and show the insides, but with the magic of editing, we can get an idea of what this maze-like structure actually looks like, and with a little explanation of why it's there in the first place, the plan is to walk away from this video with a better idea of whether this is truly revolutionary. Think of it like this. When a speaker is playing frequencies forward, it's easy to grasp the concept that it's also playing frequencies backwards or behind the driver. Now, these frequencies will create pressure, and the lower the frequencies are, will create more pressure. Trekking with me so far?
No.
Great. Now, since the beginning of music reproduction, these back waves and pressure have been tackled more ways than we can cover in this video, but the point is this: most companies recognize the back pressure as a problem and it needs to be dealt with. Behind a driver, we might see something like polyfill or other absorptive materials designed to absorb, transfer to heat, or help dissipate this energy caused by the back waves or pressure. As for KEF and how they are approaching this problem, this little disc of mazes and chambers is new to the industry and is how KEF is dealing with the back pressure of a driver. Actually, let me repeat that last sentence but change one key word. This little disc of mazes and chambers is new to the industry and is how KEF is dealing with the back pressure of the tweeter. So, as we discussed before, as frequencies get lower, pressure is increased, which also must mean as frequencies become higher, pressure is lessened. Now, I'm certainly not here to rain on anyone's parade, and that's not my intention. I'd like to believe that you guys might appreciate a complete understanding of what this disc is meant for and what it's really doing, and to be honest, I found it hard to find this level of detailed information on KEF's site. In any event, how does the old LS50 compare to the Meta, or in other words, I got a dad joke for you. Is Meta better? Nailed it. When I listened to both the original KEF LS50 and Meta, I did indeed notice some differentials on top, but it was pretty subtle. Making my way through a number of tracks, I walked away appreciating just a little more air in all things in the time domain with the Meta over the original LS50. Later in the speaker measurements, we can quantify these findings, as there does seem to be just a little more lift with the Meta's response starting around 3K all the way out to 20K. Keeping this short and sweet, while there is nothing worth chatting about for the next 15 minutes, with the Meta, you can expect the last mile when it comes to all things up top. For listeners who love all things beyond the core fundamentals and want to hear every single sneeze, chair squeak, and cough in the recording, I do think the newer Meta is slightly better at peeling back the layers of detail and extension. Overall, with treble extension, I think the Meta is indeed the winner of the two speakers. Mid-range, or in this case, upper mid-range, seemed to be the biggest difference I heard between the two KEF brothers. With the LS50, I heard a little more bite and sometimes forward snap in the upper mid-range, especially with electric guitars. Listening to a wide range of classic rock tracks, it was pretty easy to hear that while the original LS50s did a fine job with most of the material, I did indeed notice some frequencies in the upper mid-range did poke out of the mix a little more than the meta and sounded a little more forward. Switching to the meta, there seemed to be a little more forgiveness in the upper mid-range, and it did make longer term listening sessions a little bit easier. While I wouldn't say the upper mid-range is soft on the meta, I would say it does indeed sound softer than its older brother, the LS50s. So, is there a winner in this category? It's not that easy, and I don't think so. It could come down to your music preference and tastes. If you want something with a little more bite in the upper mid-range, or maybe something that sounds a little more expressive, the older LS50s might be the way to go. If you want the upper mid-range to be oh so slightly softer or a little more relaxed, making it easier to rock out with AC/DC, then I would say the meta is the way to go. Now, as we move into the heart of mid-range and explore some of the key differences in vocals, I'm gonna follow the same advice that I recently gave to my good friend Randy, the Cheap Audio Man. Sometimes reporting there is nothing worth chatting about is the most important thing that you can say in a review. And you know what? That is exactly how I feel about the KEF brothers specific to the heart of mid-range. Calling it like I hear it, I had a heck of a time hearing anything in the heart of the performance that would lead me to say one speaker is superior to the other, because the truth is, they sounded nearly identical to me, and that is exactly what I'm going to report. So when it comes to bass performance on both the LS50 and Metas, I find these two little speakers to be less about their overall bass performance and more about everything else. While they can play confident down to around 50 in my room, anything below that, it needs the help of a subwoofer. Now, trying to hear any worthwhile differences in texture and tone between these two speakers for me was rather problematic. And it seems like my takeaway about bass on both the Meta and LS50s goes something like this. I don't think that anyone that is jazzed about either of these speakers is because these hit crazy low or they even offer the last word in texture and tone and bass. That is to say, they get the job done and they deliver a decent amount of bass for their size. Also worth mentioning, for anything closer than 20 inches from the front wall, KEF does include port plugs to help with bass pressure and is a great idea for those that are using these in desktop situations. As you guys know, Soundstage, or a speaker's ability to disappear in the room and leave us with the performance, is numero uno when it comes to what I'm looking for in hi-fi. It's also been my experience that this ability, or lack thereof, does indeed seem to be tied to its vertical and horizontal capabilities. The good news is both of these speakers perform very well when it comes to the vanishing act, and both are worth celebrating in this regard. To be quick and concise about it, I do think both of these speakers are great at staging, and it was difficult to say one was clearly superior to the other. For me, it all came down to the top end, and even then, it was pretty dang subtle. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the original LS50s do sound a little more forward with the upper mid-range, so depending on the placement in the mix, it's possible that forward sound of the originals might be enough to break the illusion of the performance in the room, and again, something I did take notice on a couple of tracks as I was listening. Alright guys, starting with an impedance sweep, I gotta say, I'm a little confused how KEF is speccing either speaker as being 8 ohms. I never had time spent with the original LS50s, and with this being my first time, I had to double check the specs to make sure I was reading this right. According to KEF, both the LS50 and LS50 Meta have a nominal impedance of 8 ohms, but they also cite the lowest impedance of the Meta as 3.5 and the original being 3.2. While I'm not interested in picking any fights here, I gotta say I'm a little confused as to how how KEF is claiming the 8 ohms nominal impedance. Based upon the lowest point of the suite being within 80% of the rated nominal impedance, neither the LS50 or Meta can be considered 8 ohm speakers. So without making this awkward, I'm just going to stick to my guns and call it like it is. The KEF LS50 and LS50 Meta are 4 ohm speakers, and both of them are rather difficult loads. Both are rated at 85 dB sensitivity, and while I don't have a way to check for sensitivity accuracy, that seems about right, so they need some muscle to wake them up. Make no mistake about that, guys. Taking some shots of both speakers back to back using Clio Pocket and a 7 millisecond gated window, both speakers exhibit a very linear response. Taking a look, we do see indeed the Metas in green do offer a little more lift and extension, and even more, do show a slight fishbowl in the upper frequencies between 1 and 5K. Keeping in mind, I always listen before measuring, it was nice to see that what I was hearing is quantifiable and it is shown in the measurements. Only with the exception of a little sag in the heart of mid-range with the original LS50s, it seems that everything I was hearing, and more important, everything you can expect, is exactly what I just said. With the LS50s, you will have a little more snap in the upper mid-range, while with the Meta, it's gonna be a little bit softer. And above that, more air and extension with the newer Metas. All right, without spending the next 15 minutes on it, let's take a look at the horizontal off axis of the original LS50, which is expressed in red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. And now, let's take a look at the LS50 Metas. Here's the bottom line, folks. Both offer excellent fall away in the horizontal plane with no clear winner. I'm extremely pleased with the tight grouping and textbook response in both speakers. And again, doing the same thing with the vertical off axis, let's take a look at the original LS50, which looks great. And now let's pull up the newer Metas, which again, looks great. Again, in both situations, as I moved the mic up 4 inches at a time, both of these speakers kept pace with some of the better measuring speakers that we spent time with here at NRD. So clearly, both of these speakers, when held up to the light, seem to be well designed and engineered, and both the horizontal and vertical measurements back this up. Taking a look at the last and final measurement, which is known as a spectral decay or waterfall, first with the LS50, we see what we want to see, which is a clean fall away throughout the measured response. Taking a peek at the Meta, we see the same thing all over again. And once again, while it's hard to declare a clear objective winner of the two, one thing is clear. Both measure excellent and deserve positive recognition for the engineering that went into these speakers. Final thoughts. Is the LS50 Meta better? That joke is awful. Holy smokes. Is it better than the original LS50? I think it's slightly better. I think it's just it is a speaker that I would personally pick between the two. So it has my vote. But I need to say something, and I need to get this off my chest. I need to be honest with you guys that if I didn't see that video that KEF released talking about the LS50 Meta and just drooling over all of this research and development and hard work that KEF put into this speaker, if I hadn't watched that video and I knew what the heck was going on, and I just heard these two speakers back to back, I'm going to tell you, I would not have rushed in here, set up the camera, fired everything up, and tell you guys, holy smokes, something's going on with the speaker. It's mind-blowing. I can't figure it out. What the heck is inside this thing? That would not have happened. And that's the honest-to-goodness truth. And so I can't say in full confidence that even though I can admire the amount of forward thinking that we're seeing in the Meta, that I'm hearing the results of all that hard work. Everything that I'm hearing, it sounds to me like it's some voicing changes in the loudspeaker. That is my biggest takeaway here, and that's difficult to say, and I know that KEF isn't going to be in love with me saying that, but it's the truth, is I find the differences here to be rather subtle, And I can't say in full confidence that those differences are based on the fact that we have this, you know, fancy meta disc. I don't think they are. I think what makes recommending the LS50 Meta right now, like, hey, full recommendation, hit the checkout button, buy them all day. What's stopping me from saying that, saying those words, even though this is a really great sounding loudspeaker, is the game has changed since the original LS50. It's changed a lot. And we are in an era of bookies and many, many options out there that have all stepped up their game, and a lot of that is because of the original LS50. They're trying harder to compete, and there is a lot of competition out there. The other thing that we have to acknowledge is a lot of folks out there at that asking price, $1,500, they want the whole enchilada. They want the entire performance, and that includes deep, meaningful bass. And I wish I was able to tell you that this is the whole enchilada, but the truth is it's not. It's not the whole enchilada. It is doing some amazing things for sure, but you're going to be reaching for a subwoofer. Let's just be clear about that. And gosh, I mean, KEF would impress me if they came out with, I don't know, a sub with a couple, I don't know, 6.5-inch drivers that drop down to around 11 hertz. I mean, that would be interesting if they could do that. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That is exactly how I feel about the LS50 Meta versus the original LS50. I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. It helps us out. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video.